football fans. You know, they were in the hooded top.
Oasis just took it to the States, Japan, you know, like 5 years later, 1997 or whatever, you go to New York and there'd be a guy who looks like he's just stepped out of Old Trafford. I can't say that, can I? No, I can't, because they're City fans and they'll kill me.
The Oasis sound was very different to anything any other band was doing at the time. Their style of rock and roll is often described as a wall of sound, and it was the older Gallagher brother Noel who was responsible for this.
Noel Gallagher, big Epiphone fan. On the first album cover there's one in the corner of the flat that they've all had the picture taken, and that was bought off our guitar repairman. I remember the first time he decided that he liked Epiphone guitars, because I was sat at the other end of the shop playing one for a Boss SE50 and doing these chords and stuff, and Noel sort of walked up and he's like, "Oh, that looks great, that, you know, can I have a go?" So I think he bought an Epiphone Sheraton off us first, which would have been the one you'd seen in a lot of the earlier gigs, like a very much like this kind of shape, like a semi-acoustic, hollow-bodied, 2 humbucking pickups there, quite nice to play. And very uncontrollable when they're loud, which I think he liked the struggle of that. And they ended up having the Noel Gallagher Supernova, which is one of those guitars with like a Union Jack pattern on the front, like that kind of thing. Something very synonymous with Oasis. So later on, he started using some other guitars, things like Gibson SGs, which are a very basic, solid wood construction guitar. Work well at high volume, they don't feed back loads, you don't get loads of squealing and scrawling off them, they don't weigh much, they don't do your backing, and you know, they look pretty cool as well. So I think image is probably a consideration now as well. Telecasters, I've seen him with. Now, the reason for using a Telecaster, they're a very kind of twangy sounding guitar. You know, if you imagine like twangy guitar sounds like surf sounds or like country music, stuff like that. It's a Telecaster that gives that tone. It's very different from anything else he's used, so I assume he picked that for the sound.
You've got the attitude, the clothes, you know, the gang. I mean, when they used to be on stage, Grigsby and Bonehead looked like, okay, if you want to try it and you can get past Liam and Noel, then you've got us to deal with. Do you know what I mean? It was that, you know, real solid gang thing.
But Liam's presence ensured they would never be forgotten.
So you could just tell when he walks in the room, before you even met him. There's a buzz going around the room as he walks in the room, he's just got something about him. That makes him stand out from your average Joe.
He's really good at telling people to fuck off. Isn't it though? It can make that mean so much.
But he just had a really engaging presence, and I think one of the things to me that I think made them manage to become the huge thing they was, but he had this belief, I think, it just came across, but he believed he should be there and he had an authority on stage. And I think if you have that, other people sort of will believe it. It was just an amazing presence that everybody, whether they even really love what was going on musically, was engaged by. And it's a very hard thing to define, but it just has a kind of magnetism here.
I don't think any of us ever saw the potential in what Noel was doing as a songwriter. None of us realised that we were looking at probably one of the most important songwriters, you know, of Britain in our lifetime.
I think Noel Gallagher is probably a genius. I think he's extremely intelligent. I think he's extremely talented. I think he's, you know, probably the best in the world at what he does. And what is it he does? He writes great tunes and has got one of the best bands in the world. And for my money, he's the main man.
I got a CD or whatever, bootleg tape, of a lot of Noel's early stuff, and it's just unrecognisable from... It's quite amazing. He goes from Conference League football to Premiership football in about a year, in terms of songwriting. He goes from being Woking Football Club to Tottenham within the year. You know, I still can't work out how that happened. Must have some bloody good drugs in Burnage at that time. Sitting there in your ivory tower, looking out on the world, there's no black...
But it wasn't the drugs that helped Noel, it was his love of music.
It's a life far removed from where you've been.
His influences were varied and ranged from Pink Floyd to the Stone Roses, and of course his heroes, John Lennon, Paul Weller and Johnny Marr, formerly of the Smiths, all hugely important.
And a lot of people don't understand that the acid house thing was very important in the development of Oasis, because Noel really got into acid house. That music had these big euphoric choruses, you know, and a lot of that kind of, you know, waving your hands in the air and that kind of big chorus. Well, that's what 5 years later, that's what Noel's like. They're going to football a lot. They're going to Manchester City and they're hearing 40,000 people singing big choruses. So big choruses or big anthems become part of Noel's musicality.
Noel writes songs that you can sing after a few drinks in a pub or at a football ground. You know, these are songs that lads can sing and not feel wussy about it.
I think this of all songwriters, in fact, you know, all the quality ones, they know what makes people react to a song. They know if they do 2 verses of this, you know, 1 chorus of this, and do you know what I mean? All the little tricks that they use and repeating certain words, and you know, he's very, very good at that, Noel. You know, he knows how to, you know, he knows how to put a good song together. And also with the lyrics, if they say, well, what does it mean? He's going, well, see, you're going to have to work that out for yourself. Oh, God, it's so deep. Look at that. I mean, if Bob Dylan can get away with it, I'm sure Noel Gallagher can.
Guitarists are a breed of people who generally want to be better than each other all the time. It's very competitive. It's all like, look, I can play faster than you, but I can play this, but I can play with my teeth, I can play behind my head, I can play with no arms. You know, and at the end of the day, a good song's a good song. A good song will stand up when somebody sits down with an acoustic guitar, strums a few chords and sings it, and that's a good song. A band's job really should be to embellish the song. And what I'm saying is, in the past, a lot of bands weren't looking at it that way. They were looking at that, that's my bit of glory there, and this is mine, how technical can I make that? And trying to show off that, you know, their playing abilities, rather than just letting the song flow out. And that's what Oasis changed.
I remember reading one of Noel's first interviews, and he was talking about, if my name can go down with Ray Davies, Steve Marriott, Lennon and McCartney, and even if I end up drunk and in a gutter with no money, I'll be happy.
The band's first single, Columbia, was a limited edition and released only to journalists, Creation Records staff and radio programmers. The BBC's Radio 1 played it 19 times, almost unheard of for a new band. Word was getting around. Their second single was released on the 11th of April 1994 and